Unemployment rose by 10% after World War I. The American economy suffered from substantial deterioration. Congress has recently passed the Forney-McCumber tariff.
Plus, the promised inside look into the outrageous Teapot Dome scandal circulating President Harding's administration and how women are still changing the forefront of American politics.
And later, the great wave of African American migration from the South. In addition, the height of national controversy at the moment, Marcus Garvey, proud leader of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Hello and welcome to our viewers in the United States today. I am Tina Liu.
And I'm Sarah Dave. We are your anchor team for CNN's newest edition, Time Travel. This is Time Travel Newsroom. It's been economic turmoil in the U.S. following World War I, the deadliest war humanity has ever seen. The consistent patterns of economic recession have not only plagued the U.S., but are rampant in universal commercialism, and exports began to decline.
The U.S. economy replevied from the Depression with the development of electric energy.
America is a changing consumer market and society. Modern and advanced technologies such as household appliances, automobiles, and as well as other mass-produced products dominate the American marketplace. Our socioeconomic analyst Aisha Ganku has more on the recession and socioeconomic conflicts America faced following the aftermath of World War I. How has the U.S. dealt with the economic setback?
Electric energy served as our way out of economic depression. Newly developed products such as automobiles paved a path to prosperity and signaled an improved consumer society. According to reports from 1919 to 1929, the gross national product swelled by 40%. As wages and salaries grew, the cost of living remained relatively stable, giving American citizens more purchasing power. Currently, in 1929, according to statistics, 2/3 of all Americans live in a dwelling that has electricity, 1/4 of all families own vacuum cleaners, and 1/5 have toasters. More products are available to more than just the rich. Indoor plumbing and electricity have become more common in private residences, and canned foods and ready-made clothing are cheaper. Many of these goods are affordable because more than one family member earns wages or the breadwinner has taken up a second job.
Throughout the decade, automobile registration has risen from 8 million to 23 million. Today, 1 in 5 Americans own a car. The automobile has become the vanguard of the era's material wonders. How has the general public reacted to the automobile?
Henry Ford is the founder of the well-known Ford Motor Company. He has revolutionized automobile production by utilizing the assembly line method. As a result of this, automobiles are currently cheaper to the public. Mass production and competition have made cars more affordable to even some working-class families, and cars are a necessity rather than a luxury. Just as railroads had 75 years earlier, cars changed American life. Streets have become cleaner without horse dung, women have more independence, families have homes on wheels for camping or to escape, and people abandoned crowded, inconvenient streetcars. What's important is that the car today serves as a social equalizer for Americans.
How does big business appeal to consumers? What are the tactics of marketers?
Advertising is a huge part of consumerism. Today, in 1929, more money is spent on advertising goods and services than on all types of education. Advertising theorists believe that they can manipulate any person's likings. To endorse their products, marketers hire sports heroes and movie stars.
How has America changed socially and culturally?
Americans in the decade have spent time far more leisurely than at any point in human history. Americans have a love affair with cinema. They're Saturday night moviegoers. Restaurants, in addition, are being introduced to the newly socio-culture enhanced society.
What is the key factor in driving the mainstream American public to consumerism?
What motivates consumerism are installment plans, which allows middle-class American families to purchase items such as automobiles or refrigerators and pay off their debts gradually over time. With a buy now, pay later kind of mentality, many Americans take advantage of the credit options.
Big businesses are growing in prosperity. New lobbying, the act of convincing federal and state officials to support an interest, is playing a big role for these thriving businesses. From these actions, Congress has recently passed the Fordney-McCumber Tariff Act, which has raised tariff rates and further assisted big business around the country. How has labor been affected by the growth of big business?
Organized labor is weakened due to the increase in labor strikes and the favorability of big business by President Harding's administration. Business efforts of reducing labor organizations include yellow dog contracts, welfare capitalism, and prohibiting closed shops, but rather enabling open shops. The Fordney-McCumber tariff was recently passed as a result of the overwhelming majority of Republicans in both the House and Senate wanting to return the nation's tariff policy to protectionism. This tariff raised tariff rates to their highest level at the time, exceeding the Payne-Aldrich tariff of 1909, and granted to the president broad powers to raise or lower rates by as much as 50% on items recommended by the Tariff Commission. It introduced the American selling price, as well as made it harder for Europeans to pay off their post-war debt by trade.
Union members have fallen from 5.1 million to 3.6 million in just the last 9 years.
Big business has begun to dominate and gain control of the rural areas of the economy by creating factories in the field.
Republican candidate Warren G. Harding won his victorious support in 1920 by campaigning against Wilson, promising a return to normalcy. Now, a scandal threatens to ruin his golden reputation. What exactly occurred in this scandal?
The Teapot Dome scandal took place in the first year of President Harding's term. President Harding had transferred supervision of the naval oil reserve lands from the Navy to the Department of Interior in 1921. Albert Bacon Fall, the Secretary of Interior, secretly granted rights to the Teapot Dome reserves on April 7, 1922, to Harry F. Sinclair of the Mammoth Oil Company. He also granted similar rights to the other oil company leaders. It was discovered that Fall had received over $40,000 in Liberty bonds in assisting Sinclair and Edward L. Doney of the Pan American Petroleum Company.
How has Congress reacted to this scandal?
When Congress found out about this, Harding was directed to cancel the leases. The Supreme Court declared the leases fraudulent and that it was illegal for Harding to transfer authority to Fall. The ruling took a toll on Harding's health, and he died before it was finished.
How has this affected Harding's legacy as president, and what were the punishments for Albert Fall and other involved parties?
Fall has been convicted of accepting a bribe and will be imprisoned. Doheny and Sinclair were acquitted on the charges of bribery and criminal conspiracy. The scandal has immensely downsized Harding's popularity in the eye of the American public as president.
Calvin Coolidge. He took over as president in 1923 when President Harding passed away. 1919 brought Coolidge to national attention when Boston policemen went on strike after the city's police commissioner tried to block their unionization with the AFL. Coolidge's agenda mirrors Harding's to an extent, in which he has already signed the Immigration Act restricting immigration from Southern and Eastern European countries. As current president, Coolidge has already reduced federal debt, lowered income tax rates, and began construction of a national highway system. Coolidge has spoken out in favor of civil rights. He refused to appoint a KKK member to office and appointed African Americans to government positions and advocated anti-lynching laws. In 1924, Coolidge signed the Indian Citizenship Act, granting full citizenship to all Native Americans while permitting them to retain tribal land rights. Coolidge will not be seeking re-election in 1928, and currently, Herbert Hoover is on the Republican nominee on the ticket for the 1929 election. Even after American women achieved suffrage in the 1920s, they are still currently excluded from power structures.
To advance their causes, women made use of tactics that advance modern pressure group politics, like businesses. Common issues that women focus on are birth control, peace, education, Indian affairs, and opposition to lynching. They lobby legislatures to support their causes.
In November of 1920, the Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company delivered to the public from Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, through radio that Republican nominee Warren G. Harding had defeated James Cox in the presidential election. The signal went as far as New Hampshire and as far south as Louisiana. Call letters KDKA was soon assigned to the radio station. After KDKA had been running for about a year, Westinghouse established 3 new additional broadcasting stations: WJZ, Newark, New Jersey; WBZ, Springfield, Massachusetts; and KYW, Chicago, Illinois. The radio has grown to become a powerful advertising and entertainment agent. At the end of 1922, there were over 500 stations across the country. The Radio Corporation of America formed America's first radio network, the National Broadcasting Company. Americans from all over the country have access to listen to the same programming material. As a result, regional differences began to fade as the mass entertainment culture flourished and boomed. Baseball games and boxing matches are now able to be reached by those far away from the arenas and stadiums.
Today, in 1929, 10 million families in the U.S. own radios, and $850 million a year is spent on radio equipment. Since broadcasting is a private enterprise and not tax-supported, American radio programming consists of entertainment programs which bring higher profits and viewership.
The Great Migration. Populations of African Americans have begun to migrate up north into metropolises like New York, Chicago, Detroit, and Houston. Blacks settling into the communities of Chicago's South Side, New York's Harlem, and Los Angeles' Central Avenue are looking for employment and are willing to perform laborious menial jobs for whites, ranging from domestic servants, janitors, and longshoremen. White laborers, including veterans from World War I, unable to find employment, have spoken out with frustration and anger, claiming the large numbers of African Americans pouring into the workforce in the industrialist North robs jobs and lowers wages.
The African American communities, of course, still suffer from discrimination. Discrimination alongside low wages leaves blacks in a situation where they are not able to afford housing in safe, secure neighborhoods which are dominated by whites. As a result, African Americans seek cheap housing options.
Marcus Garvey, a Jamaican immigrant who has risen up to be the representation of the strong African American spirit of resistance and pride around the globe. Garvey has inspired movements of change for racial independence and equality with his separatist philosophies of Pan-Africanism and Black nationalism. Currently, the controversial Black nationalist figure is set to be released from jail and deported back to his homeland in Jamaica. Apparently, reports claim Garvey is charged with attempting to sell stock in his company, the Black Star Steamship Line, by advertising a ship it does not own. In the early 1920s, Garvey created the Black nationalist group Universal Negro Improvement Association and the African Communities League. Garvey believes blacks must carry pride for their African heritage and should distance themselves from the corrupt white society predominant in America. Throughout the decade, Garvey has spread his ideas with meetings and parades. Garvey is notorious for building the Phyllis Wheatley Hotel, for which only blacks can make a reservation, and has established the Negro World, a newspaper preaching black independence as well as the Black Star Steamship Line. Middle-class black leaders and clergymen oppose the UNIA for its extremism and separatist ideologies and philosophies. Management of Garvey's economic plans were poorly conducted in the mid-20s, leading the UNIA on the road to decline.
Rural North America is declining in land fortunes, forcing Mexicans to immigrate to the U.S. The Anglo Farmers Association seeks Mexicans for cheap labor. According to reports, 3/4 of farm labor today is done by Mexican immigrants. Few successful Mexicans have been rising to middle-class status as shopkeepers and professionals of all trades. Low-rent districts attract masses of Mexicans to metropolises such as Denver, San Antonio, Los Angeles, and Tucson. Unfortunately, Mexicans suffer from poor sanitation, a lack of police protection, and poor education. In addition to the Mexicans, America has seen an influx of Puerto Rican immigrants. The economy in Puerto Rico shifted from sugar to coffee production, creating a labor surplus. Thus, many Puerto Ricans have left for America, settling into cities like New York for cheap labor jobs. In cities, Puerto Ricans established their own unique neighborhoods known as barrios. Select Puerto Ricans own businesses, specifically bodegas, Spanish for grocery stores, as well as cafes, boarding houses, and social organizations to assist assimilation of Puerto Ricans into American society. Educated Puerto Ricans have become lawyers, doctors, business owners, and community leaders.
Mass culture has evolved throughout the decade with the introduction of shops, movie houses, sporting arenas, crossword puzzles, and mini golf into mainstream media. People have begun to abandon traditional values and go against such old-fashioned dated morals by patronizing speakeasies or illegal saloons. The ideal of small-town society, however, still continues to exist today as America enters the 1930s, preserving the simplicities of a fading lifestyle and world in cities. Rampant materialism and social change are among the issues we face entering the 1930s in our rapidly changing nation.
That's all for today's show. Be sure to tune in next time to Time Travel! Thanks to you all for joining our program. I'm Tina Liu, Time Travel news anchor, signing off.
And I'm Sarah Day. We'll see you next week.